I am Dr. D.V. Guha, ex-Deputy Director General of the Geological Survey of India. I am going to speak on a topic which is scientific errors that can result when geologic evidences are ignored. Normally, when we go for mapping in any terrain, unknown terrain, the field studies that are carried out by the geologist in general is based on the identification of the rock type, their disposition in the field, structural and mineralogical details, etc., are noted. So the mapping of a complex rock type, such as the granites, or the granolites, or the high-grade rocks, ultramafic and mafic rocks, becomes more and more problematic. And here actually we need to emphasize on the field characters of the rock types, their color, their hardness, their texture, and everything, so that, and the mineralogy as far as possible, so that rough naming can be done to the rock type in the field diary. And there are problems while noting all these things, the alterations which take place due to metasomatic processes, due to metamorphic processes, and the hydrothermal processes and other alteration types. So in a area with a more prominent in a terrain which has undergone polyphase deformation becomes the more complex, and attendant metamorphism creates several phases of granitic activity also, which creates a problem in mapping in that terrain, unless and otherwise the mapper is very conversant with the mythological concepts in the field. The sampling in such terrains in general pose very big problems when so many geological events have superimposed over one another, thereby making identification and collection of proper samples a matter of great concern. That means in an area where metamorphism and deformation and attendant metamorphism and taken place, and there is hydrothermal alteration also. So these changes in the field are to be noted very carefully. To exemplify one such problem in sampling, study of granitic rocks are taken here as an example. So the study of granitic rocks from the times of first generation mapping to the second generation mapping and to the thematic mapping done by all the organizations in this country. These are dominantly directed towards chemical analysis and experimental and theoretical petrology, rather than the determination of textures and petrography as seen in these sections. That means we actually depend too much on the not on the field mapping, field characterization, changes from one precursor rock to the changed rock, which may be a granite gneiss, from a precursor rock to a migmatite to a granite gneiss, and we depend too much on the randomly selected or randomly collected samples from the field, which have undergone which are sent for chemical analysis, and some data is created out of that chemical analysis. So we neglect actually the field characters and the petrographic studies in thin sections, and that creates the basic trouble in, and the scientific error starts coming. So initiation in this photograph we can see is a dioritic rock. Initially is a precursor rock, is a metamorphosed rock we are seeing, and initiation of feldspar plus quartz partial melt has started happening in the northwestern part where the scale is there. You can see there are finer bands also. You can see it here. So this initiation of the partial melt formation in a dioritic rock in the area with the increase in pressure temperature condition has to be observed very keenly, and a gradation from this precursor rock, which is the host rock for the final granite melt, is to be noted in the field very carefully. So the next step here, we can see here that growth of again of feldspar plus hornblende can be seen around garnet grains. These globular circular grains of our garnet, which is the brown, mantled by hornblende and then plagioclase, and these grow as again within this altered dioritic rock. So these are the features to be identified, how the rock is changing from one to the other. Here, this is the granitic part is starting, or the migmatitic part is starting in this from alteration of the original dioritic rock, as I have shown in the earlier photograph. Next step here, we can see further moving from the area of the formation of the globules of hornblende plus plagioclase around garnet. We can see here these small black spots within the white one, the again formation of plagioclase quartz k feldspar partial melt, which is nucleating over hornblende grains. So these are the features to be noted in the field very carefully, and samples are to be taken from all the areas seen above, as said above, and they need to be tested chemically and petrographically also in due course of time, so that a sequence of events are noted on in the field and also in the laboratory, and the chemistry is interpreted in terms of the sequence of events which is actually happening in the field, which has actually happened in the rock type. So finally, the final result comes in with a granite rock, granitic rock, porphyritic granitic rock with the MME, mafic microgranular enclaves, which are also containing plagioclase phenocryst within it. So this is the final product we are getting of a granite. What it started from is the diuretic rock, which is having some little initiation of partial melt, formation of different organ of feldspars, and the formation of more partial melts, and finally the granite gneiss comes into the picture. So all the sampling has to be done based on these observations in the field, from the precursor rock to the granite itself, and not that very we are studying the granites that only this granitic part which the photograph is showing right now. The samples are taken in lot from this only, and the others are forgotten. So we cannot identify the characters, how this has developed from an original rock to a granite gneiss through deformation and metamorphism, or through magmatism, which you can say that precursor rock changing to migmatite with higher grade, then changing to an anatectic melt, then homogenization and formation of an intrusion of these granitic plutons in the same terrain. So these changes are to be seen in the field, as well as in the grid-wise pattern, grid pattern-wise sampling done in all the rock types, and there is study done through the petrographic studies, thin section studies, and they are then chemically analyzed individually, so that there is a chain of changes seen in the chemistry along with the field and petrographic characterization. So this is very important. If this is not done, the error will certainly come, because we will only focus on the granite. How it has formed, we cannot come to know. We will have some chemical data. It has formed, somebody may call with the same data, this is a magmatic, somebody may call it is a metasomatic, somebody may call else something else. So these are the errors which can happen if we do not do the job in a proper way in the field itself, and by studying the petrographic thin sections of these rocks collected from the field in a gradual manner. So the chemical analysis, if we do only, neglecting all the field features and the petrographic characterizations, and they will be certainly classified based on certain diagrams in the source types like S or I or A or M type. So this chemistry will demonstrate certain line of descent of the liquid to the temperature minimum in the albite orthoclase quartz system. But the basic fault will lie in avoiding the field characters and the petrographic characters, because we have only taken some samples from the true granite which has formed at the last stage, and not taken samples from the precursor rock and the transition. So chemical analysis will of any rock taken from anywhere, neglecting the true rock or the precursor rock in the beginning and the final rock and the transition rock. So this chemical analysis will certainly give a very erroneous result in nutshell. Going ahead with this, when only chemical composition is used, other geological evidences seen in the petrography, such as the formation of myrmekite or the perthite or the migration of soda, potash, and silica, etc., these are hidden, and only chemical composition is used for characterization of the rock type or the granite. So scientific errors are bound to happen, and interpretations will not be as it should have been if the field characterization and the petrographic characterization of the rocks were taken into account, where the final rock type and the initial rock type and the transitional rock types should have been taken into consideration for chemistry of all the things based on the petrographic and field studies. If this is not done, this the final results based on only chemistry will lead to a erroneous classification of the granite, its formation, its genetic aspects, etc. Where the granitoids contain rim or wart-like myrmekite, improper assumptions can be made concerning the complete history of these rocks. So if the only analysis, chemical analysis part is taken, and these textures like the myrmecite or the perthites or the similar textures like zoning in perthites, etc., are not taken into consideration, and only chemistry is taken into consideration, this will lead to some erroneous results and erroneous interpretation rather for this granite system or the granite rock, which is seen in the field, taking a transition from the original precursor to the granite with the transition rock type. So after solidification, deformation and modification by fluids containing K and Si can cause differentiation progressively towards the temperature minimum of the alvite orthoclase quartz system. So this modification in this system will happen. This will only be found by petrographic studies, or this can only be identified through petrographic studies by properly identifying the myrmecite and the perthite and the zoning in perthite, etc., in this genetic system. So these are very important in scientific interpretation of the rock types we are dealing with. Here it is granite. The chemical analysis can look the same in both the magmatic and metasomatically altered granitoids. This is what I have told already. Only chemistry, if it is taken into account, and no field and petrographic characterizations are taken into account, this will lead to a very confusing genetic aspect of the rock. Someone may call this with the data available with them as a magmatic, and someone based on certain plots in the Harkar diagram or the spider diagram, and some may even call this as metasomatically altered granitoids. So these debate will go on, and this error is only because that the field characterizations and the petrographic characterizations are not taken into account. Only the chemistry has been taken into account. So these type of puzzling things will come if the study is not done properly, and the errors are bound to occur. It is only by analyzing textures as seen in thin sections that extensive changes in chemistry and mineralogy. Obviously, if the textures are suggesting one mineral changing to other, a peritectic type of crystallization, one mineral plus some melt giving rise to some other peritectic crystallization, some other mineral can be detected through texture only, and that are unrelated to magmatic processes. These sort of things can be detected through petrography and obviously through the field studies. These are to be taken into account very rigorously while interpreting the granitic rock type in any area. So understanding the significance of myrmecite and perthite is important because its presence in a thin section is an indication that additional study is needed in order to fully comprehend what the chemical data mean. This is what I have already told, that if only chemistry is taken into account, you are bound to go towards a wrong interpretation of this granitic rock. Whereas if the field characterization and the petrographic characters are taken into account along with the chemistry of those individual rock types from the precursor to the transition type to the final granite body, then the results will be all right and there won't be any scientific error. The lack of noting myrmecite is an example of scientific negligence. So all mineral data, including myrmecite, should be reported when describing rocks, even if the workers do not regard myrmecite as being important. Many of the workers just give a passing remark of the myrmecite or the perthite or zoning perthites or zoning plagioclase and K feldspar, etc. So this is leading to a scientific error, which I want to stress upon here, that these studies are very important, these petrographic studies, which are based on proper collection of samples from the field. So these are the things to be taken into consideration by the geologist while working in a granitic terrain. Forming lowlands and weathered areas are normally neglected. See, these areas are normally neglected because they don't look like a granite. They look like they are different than granite in the field. So people do not see the intervening areas of a transition zone from this uh, dioritic rock, a metamorphosed dioritic rock to the granite, final granite product, and therefore thereby they create an error in sampling, and there is a bias in sampling. Only the samples from the granites are taken and not from the host rock and the transition rocks. Moreover, in many places, the replacements and recrystallization of original rock found in the resistant outcrops have removed nearly all evidence for its original composition and for its form and deformation that permitted the K and Si metasomatism. Many places it happens that because of the later fluid actions, these granites are totally changed, or they are very much modified in their mineralogy, and these things are to be seen in the field whether metasomatism has also taken place after the final cessation of the metamorphic effect and the formation of the granitic activity. So this is to be seen in the field and in the thin sections, and then chemistry is to be applied into it to interpret the genetic aspects of the genetic body. And there is another bias in sampling which occurs because modern studies of granites deal with their chemistry and isotopic compositions only. This I have already told. Only going to the chemistry and isotopic compositions, not understanding the field setup and the petrographic studies, will lead to erroneous results. So these are the scientific results, errors which can be avoided if everything is done in its proper manner. So rocks needed for these investigations must be fresh, and only a few samples are required for this. Yet it is the abundance of samples in the wall rocks and transitions to the granite and their thin sections, which are the geological evidences, that may reveal the true history of the rock. Unless this is done, the proper field study is done and the proper field mapping along with sampling with no bias, taking samples from the precursor rocks to the transition rocks to the final product, we cannot go for a proper scientific interpretation of this area. And if they are done without the help of the above said aspects, the results will be erroneous. So these are the scientific major errors which take place during studies. So some guidelines are provided for sampling. The first one is sampling must be systematic, making sure that the grid distribution of samples is obtained wherever the outcrops make it possible. If it is a regular continuous outcrop, make a grid and take samples from each grid. At least 2 samples are to be taken from each grid so that the mineralogy is identified properly. Even though the granitoid may appear to be uniform, say magnetic in appearance, 2 samples need to be taken at each collection site in a grid order to see the local and broad variation that occur. Where a granitoid is not uniform, all rock types should be collected at a given grid site. Is very clear that in a grid pattern, if the outcrops are available, at least 2 samples should be taken. And if in a grid more than one rock type is there, all the samples to be collected from that site. So where foliation is present, strike and dip must be measured of the sample that is collected, and it must be the same place at the place where the strike and dip is measured, that the sample must be taken for analysis and for petrographic and other studies. The structural attitude of the sample relative to attitude of the rocks in surrounding or adjacent areas may determine the sample's mineral and chemical composition. Because the composition may result from a metasomatic fluid moving into low pressure sites that are controlled by suitable compositions. So these are the things to be taken into consideration while sampling, and these are the guidelines for sampling. Exotic structures and textures like enclaves, sclerin, etc. in pegmatites or in the granite gneiss are commonly very much attractive, but investigator must be careful in the field not to bias the sampling by making a collection consisting of 80 to 90% of these exotic places only and not the host in which they are residing. So exotic rocks are only 10 to 20% in the host, and 80% is neglected. And the sampling, if not done properly, in proportion, like 80% should be given more stress than 10 to 20%. And samples should be collected. Say if you collect total 5 number of samples, 1 sample should be of the exotic portion like sclerin or the enclaves or the MMEs, and there should be 4 samples of the granite of the nearby area. This is the method which should be taken into consideration. Efforts must be made to find and collect transition rocks. For example, if the granitic rock contains K-feldspar megacrust, then transitions to portions of the granitic body must be looked for in which the megacrust are absent. So where the phenocrysts are present, that should be collected, and where they are not present, the samples should also be collected from those areas so that a change from no phenocryst bearing area to a phenocryst bearing area is taken through the chemistry and through the petrographic studies. If the K-FESPAR megacrystal are zoned, then transitions to places where they lack zoning must be sought. Means this is to be seen. You have to go twice to the field after doing some thin section studies initially to see where these transition zones are present in the field. If the pegmatite dikes are found, then the dikes need to be worked out along a strike to see if they grade into zones of deformation and then to where the dikes and deformation disappear. This is also important since pegmatites are found in a hydrothermal condition when the fluids generated by metamorphism and deformation and metamorphism, they create these pegmatites, and whether they are grading to deformation zones. So this is important to see, and the deformation zone, if this is present and it is grading to it, the sample should be taken accordingly. Similarly, if pegmatites occur in a granitic terrain, mostly we can find that from the in a metamorphosed granitic terrain, we can find that initial precursor rocks are by change in PT conditions go to the gneissic terrain, then it is changed to a pegmatite, and then this pegmatite is again melted through rise in the pressure temperature conditions. The melt portion is homogenized and it includes the pegmatite itself in a plutonic manner, and the granite is found this way. So these progressive changes are to be noted in the field and they are to be sampled accordingly. Investigators, this is the nutshell I am going to tell. Investigators need to combine experimental, chemical, and theoretical studies with geologic evidences obtained in the field and from detailed thin section analysis if scientific errors in interpretation are to be avoided. This is very important statement that any investigator, any geologist who is going to study these granitic rocks or similar rocks in any area, they should go for collection of field data first very rigorously with changes from original rock to the changed rock, altered rock, and their petrographical studies, and then the chemistry and isotopic every studies are to be carried out, which will only restate your statements which are seen through the field studies. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much, listeners.
Thank you, Dr. Guha, for presenting such a wonderful talk. And on a very serious issue is that often geologists tend to ignore certain things they do not understand. What your talk clearly brings out that if we do not understand something in the field, uh, we might it would be actually very good to record it that this is what I have observed, but I do not understand what it is, and take a photograph, take a sample, and
Yes.
and consult other colleagues, get it tested so that the interpretation needs to be correct. Ignoring anomalies in the field would, at some point, or in certain cases, devalue the entire work.
Yes. That is true.
Regional mapping, as much as it is important and relevant, probably more important is to observe what does not fit in. There's always a justification, a reason for it, and probably we'll be missing out on a major, let's say, mineral discovery because something was ignored. So what you have presented using a granite as a granite mapping as an example is extremely relevant and is equally relevant for any other geological terrain, any other kind of a geological field work.
Yes. Yes. That is true. That is very much true. One must be very cautious about mapping any terrain, and one must always see what is the original the rock type which is not altered by deformation and metamorphism. And if it is all originally a metamorphic rock also, say a diorite is metamorphosed to amphibolite, how the changes are happening with rising temperature and pressure, they are all visible in the field if that is seen properly. And this identification of the lithology in the field and its change from one rock to the other gradually is very much important, and that is to be noted by the worker very rigorously. And sampling bias has not to be there. All the samples are to be collected and they are to be studied first through petrographic studies. By thin section studies, the mineralogy is identified, the change in mineralogy is identified, and finally the chemistry will only add to those ideas which are seen actually in the field. geology is a field science, and the field characterization cannot be overlooked by only studying the chemistry of the rock. Chemistry will give you some ideas that any chemical analysis of any unknown rock will give you some data of its say silica, alumina, and iron, and magnesium, and calcium, potassium, everything, and that will plot into some domain, and you can just simply say this is this rock, that rock. But in the field, this is not happening. The field, you have something else, and you are reporting something else through the chemistry only, not going to the actual field characterization. So these are very big errors that scientists normally do, and if you do not roam over or walk over each and every step of the field area, these errors are bound to happen. And my only appeal is that to the scientists, to the geologists, that you walk upon the area fully and see the changes which is happening by nature, that from the precursor original rock to the final changed rock. So this change is to be noted thoroughly and very systematically, and the sampling is to be done accordingly, and then only the chemistry of those systematically collected samples will give you a combined result of the field aspects and the chemistry, and both will be having complementary to each other characterization. This is what I want.
I fully agree with what you are saying. I have another example that suddenly springs to mind is I have been exploring for porphyries and porphyry-related mineralization. The alteration in the rock was so pervasive and so strong that the original rock fabric was totally wiped out, and only thing you could observe was the altered material. So
Yes.
in certain places, in certain situations, the significance of the original rock is also not so much there, but the presence of alteration actually leads to mineral discovery. And so not only the metamorphic changes, but also changes with alteration and hydrothermal fluid alterations are equally important, especially when we view in the perspective of making a mineral discovery. So
Yes,
the topic that you have brought out is extremely relevant.
that is true. Exactly. These alteration zones and alteration minerals are to be very thoroughly identified in the field for any, say, mineral exploration endeavor. Because these alteration zones will only lead to identification of mineralized zones.
Yeah, correct.
Because
And taking a chemistry of or even the petrography of alteration zone will more likely be misleading than the actual field association and field observation.
exactly. You are telling very rightly. And only going for the one side will create real troubles. And these are the actual scientific errors which leads to somewhere, sometimes that you are not going to your well thought upon plan, and you are not finding the thing you actually want to find because of this type of scientific errors you normally, or the geologist normally does not care of. These errors are very, you can say these are blunders at times, that you lose some deposit because you have not studied the area in a proper manner, as stated above.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for such a wonderful study. I'm sure not only the students but seasoned explorers seasoned professionals would take note or benefit from this your experience, and realize that regional mapping is important, but detailed mapping or observation and recording of anomalies is equally important. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing such a wonderful information.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amit, and I am very. Uh, I should thank personally to you that you have given me a chance to speak on these topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the video. I invite you all to please visit the Mineral Exploration Academy website and register yourself. The registration is free, and registration is open to students, teachers, professionals, or anybody who is interested in mineral exploration. The registration will also provide you an access to be able to ask questions from our experts, and also provide an opportunity for established experts to answer and interact with the students. The registration form is available on the Mineral Exploration Academy website. I would also encourage you to look at the editorials and opinion sections and visit the student question and answer section at the bottom here. In the student question and answer section, the questions asked by the students are being answered by our experts. Our experts are the top people in the field, and it would be a wonderful learning opportunity for the students for probably the questions that occurred to you but you could not ask, or to review questions what have occurred to other people and get the answers the different experts are providing. Thank you so much, and I look forward to interacting with you a lot more.